Good evening. I'm James Exum, also known as Sakshi. I'm an old yogi, and I'm finishing up, finally finishing up my 18th chapters of discourses on the Bhagavad Gita. They are done in a comparative discourse fashion using the philosopher Adi Sankara's opinions on each chapter and my personal opinions on each chapter. So this is Wednesday, September the 10th, and it's about 9:05 in the afternoon, in the evening. So let's go ahead and start. Might as well. I'm very excited to finish up all 18 chapters, this being the 18th one, as I mentioned earlier. It's been quite a project to do all 18 of them. I wrote my discourses on each one, and I'm delivering them to you as a narrative in my YouTube videos at my YouTube channel and studio. And as I said, it's been a challenge, but it's been very enjoyable. I'm glad to have number 18 out of the way finally. I did take about a week and a couple of days off right around Labor Day. I needed it to refresh myself. As I said in the video that followed that time off, I don't believe I'd taken a vacation in about a formal vacation in about 10 years. That's a very, very long time. Well, let's go and get this done. Oh, by the way, there will be. I'm shooting for 50 videos by my 75th birthday, which is September the 30th. It's coming up in 20 days, and I will have accomplished all this in less than 60 days. So that's pretty good. An average of one a day. About one a day over the last 50 to 60 days. That's a good average, especially for someone that's totally new at doing videographies and writing and narrating and editing and uploading, downloading, or whatever it's called. Again, it's been a challenge, and at my age, you need challenges to keep the not only the mind fresh, but to stay young at heart. And that's one of the secrets of my life. I've always been able to stay young at heart. So let's go now. Chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita is called the Moksha-Sannyasa Yoga. It serves the grand culmination of this timeless spiritual dialogue. I am reading from my own script that's on my monitor, connected to my computer, of course. So this timeless spiritual dialogue. It encapsulates the Gita's essential teachings on liberation, renunciation, and the ultimate realization of the self. It was composed by Vyasa, and this chapter distills the wisdom of the preceding 17 chapters, weaving together threads of action and knowledge, devotion and surrender, duty and freedom. I will also not just read from my own script, so to speak. It's actually a dialogue. It's a discursive dialogue, like a lecture in a hall on a college campus, something of that nature. Think of it that way. It's a higher end dialogue. It's not meant for beginners, though beginners are welcome, and you can catch up with in your lifetime, like I have caught up and surpassed most in my lifetime. Not all, but a lot in my lifetime. I've been at it almost 50 years. So over the centuries, speaking of years, over the centuries, its verses have been illuminated by the penetrating commentaries of Adi Sankara. He's the 8th century narrator and great commentator on most of the Vedic text, including the this text in particular, the Bhagavad Gita. He's also done other texts. Because I said it's a comparative discourse, well, then the thought would come to your mind, I would assume it would come to your mind, who's the other person that is creating commentaries besides Adi Sankara? Well, that would be me. That's one thing I do. I write and I do comparative mythology, I do comparative religious studies, I do comparative philosophical inquiries. So that would be me, and I write as Sakshi, S-A-K-S-H-I, which means the witness. It's also your soul, it's also the Atman, it's also your consciousness. And I use my modern sensibility and comparative approach to offer to the listeners and to the readers, my readers, a fresh vista for your seeking pleasure. So let's move on now. That's the introduction, and let's keep going. This discourse embarks on a comparative journey through the varied terrains of Vyasa's sacred poetry, guided by the lights of Shankara's classical work and my contemporary insights. In doing so, we encounter not only the shared depths of Eastern spirituality inquiry, but also the plural voices that animate the Gita's living legacy. And the Gita is a living legacy. The words and the teachings and the wisdom therein is a living legacy. It's not passé in any sense. This is fresh today to those that understand its meaning as it was today. It was written, which was quite a while back. You'll excuse me for a second. I need to get myself something to drink. If you've heard any of my former videos, you will know by now that I suffer from a Parkinsonian type disease, which affects my vocal cords and my facial motions and the steadiness of my extremities. So that's why I had to go get something to drink. I'm drinking some ginseng tea. Unsweetened. It helps me to get through these things. Okay, so now we're going to my very first subcategory, the structure and themes of chapter 18. At first glance, chapter 18 appears as a vast recapitulation. Arjuna, posed on the threshold of battle, seeks clarity about two pivotal concepts: sannyasa, which is the renunciation of actions, and tyaga, which is relinquishment of desire for results. In the 78 rich verses, Krishna answers by threading together the Gita's principal themes. These are bullet points, and I'll read them to you slowly. The first one being renunciation, sannyasa, and relinquishment, which is tyaga. Second one being the threefold nature of action, knowledge, and agent. The third being the role of faith, intention, and inner disposition. The fourth being selfless action and devotion as paths to liberation. The fifth being the synthesis of knowledge, jnana, action, karma, and devotion, bhakti. That last one, knowledge, action, and devotion, jnana, karma, bhakti, all the different, those are also known as different types of yoga. Raja yoga is another one. Those three have been my stepping stones in the fulfillment of my yoga progress over the last half a century. So that's the bullet points. We're moving onward. Vyasa, through Krishna's voice, presents the mature fruit of the Gita, the harmonization of human effort with cosmic order. If this seems a little highfalutin, as they used to say, or a little pretentious maybe to some ears and minds, it's because this is yoga philosophy, and that is the style in which I write. I'm not writing to impress, I'm writing to use the most precise words to fill out as much of the meaning of what I'm trying to get across to my readers, students, and listeners as possible with a vocabulary that is, yes, elevated and educated, but also truly informative. So if I offend anyone for my vocabulary, so be it. But I learned early that the more I look in the dictionary to find the meanings of words I run across in my readings or hearing people say them, the better my vocabulary becomes and the greater depth of understanding I have in general listening and reading any type of media. Adi Sankara's commentary illuminates the Gita through the lens of Advaita Vedanta, the doctrine of non-duality. This has been spoken about several times, so I will ad-lib away from what I'm reading to help fill in the blanks for you. For Shankara, the central concern of chapter 18 is the relinquishment of egoic agency and the discernment of the self as pure consciousness. That discernment is a very important thing. There's an old saying in yoga, neti neti, not this, not this. You must learn to discern from reality, from non-reality to reality. You must learn to discern from temporal to infinite. You must learn to discern from falsehood to truth. And that discernment is your method of, your modus operandi of making progress in the field of yoga philosophy. Sannyasa and Tyaga, Sankara, this is another subdivision. Sankara distinguished between outer renunciation, the giving up of the ritual actions, and inner renunciation, the abandonment of attachment to outcomes. I'm going to read that again. The giving up of ritual action and inner renunciation, and the abandonment of attachment to outcomes. For him, true sannyasa is not mere withdrawal from the world, but the realization that the ultimate agent is not the individual self, which is also jiva, but the atman, which is a synonym of jiva, the witness consciousness. Actions are performed by the gunas, qualities of nature, the wise knowing themselves as the self remain untouched. In other words, the more in touch you are with yourself, the more you are untouched by external actions, motives, forces, opinions, life in general. The threefold topology, it's the next subdivision. Shankara meticulously analyzes Krishna's threefold classification of knowledge, action, and doer in sattva, rajasic, and tamasic, elucidating how only actions performed without attachment and with a pure mind lead to liberation. You keep hearing this repeated theme of actions performed without attachment and any expectations of results from the fruit of the actions. That's very important. He emphasizes that even the scripturally prescribed duties must be relinquished in spirit, performed without desire, so that the mind becomes still ready for the dawn of self-knowledge. Well, that's one of the great goals of yoga, is self-knowledge. Liberation, moksha, and self-knowledge is very important, very important. The essence of liberation for Shankara, the final verses of the chapter resound with a proclamation of Advaita, abandoning all forms of dharma, which is your duty, surrendering entirely to the divine, which is Brahman, the creator. You are his creation. And recognizing the unreality of separateness. We are not separate from the universe. We are just as much a part of the universe as the moon and the stars and the oceans and the atoms and Brahman himself. Shankara sees this as ultimately mystical, but the Gita is not merely a manual for righteous action, but a direct pointing. It's a direct pointing finger, so to speak, to the transcendence of all dualities. Again, this is heavy duty for the first-time listeners, but you're welcome to rewind and write down notes and look them up, look up certain things you can't quite grasp the first time through, which will be most of it, I'm sure, for very new seekers in yoga, on the path of yoga. But I always recommend, and I get no compensation for this, I always recommend Wikipedia and Yogapedia. They will help break down a lot of these words and terminologies for you. The Gita is not merely a manual for righteous action, but a direct pointing finger to the transcendence of all dualities. Then I come in, that was his opinion. This is Sankara's discourse and his way of thinking about what's been said so far in this chapter. And then my opinion comes in, my narration comes in, my commentary comes in, his commentary, my commentary. So writing as Sakshi, which means the witness, is also the name I give my soul. It approaches the Gita with the sensibility of a modern comparative philosopher. Well, that's what I am. I'm a commentative comparative philosopher. That's a mouthful. And I'm not even sure if that's proper English, but that's basically what I am. My commentaries are attentive to the subtleties of translation, the pluralisms of interpretive traditions, and the existential questions of the modern seekers. When you see me reach across like that and change position, what I'm doing is I'm scrolling down the screen, contextualizing renunciation. I also present the psychological dimensions of Krishna's teachings, where Sankara reads sannyasa through the prism of non-duality. I ask what it means essentially to relinquish the fruits of action in a world driven by achievement and success. Well, I'm a modern philosopher. Sankara was a 8th century philosopher. So a lot has changed in, 1,400 years, something in that neighborhood. Math is not my strong point. I locate renunciation not in monastic withdrawal, but in the capacity to act with detachment in daily life, transforming even the most mundane task into opportunities of spiritual growth. I see washing dishes as a chance to grow spiritually, washing clothes, making my bed, combing my hair, choosing my outfit for the day. If you see life as it's happening and not reflectively or in a futuristic manner, then you are you're operating in reality. You're operating in what they call nowadays, there's a phrase for that in psychology, mindfulness, in a mindful manner. Mindfulness is the phrase they use. For myself, the Gita's wisdom offers a paradigm for navigating the complexities of modern life to act with integrity, clarity, and compassion while remaining inwardly free. If you are living in the moment, you are actually very free. And you go, well, how could that be? Well, if you're caught in a loop of revisiting some tragedy or some problem or even something pleasant in your past, you're not free because you're caught in that loop. This is what I mean. Or if you're caught in a future loop, a loop that's yet to occur, wishing things or concentrating on things wished for to come to you in the future, then you're also not free because you're caught in a loop that is yet to come. But you're still thinking about it, and the thinking in that loop-like fashion, in that circular fashion, is the creation of a loop that is concentrating and taking your present state of mind away from you into the future, if any of that made any sense. It did to me. Hopefully it does for you. The synthesis of paths. Sakshi's discourse, unlike Shankara's transcendental approach, often highlights the Gita's inclusive spirit. He finds chapter 18 a profound reconciliation of the yogas. Knowledge, action, and devotion are not opposed, but mutually enriching. The path to liberation is not a flight from action, but a luminous participation in the world suffused with awareness and surrender. Well, there we are. How about that? So let's read that one again. That's a pretty darn good concept I put together there in my writing. I think it is, and that's showing a bit of pride. But I'm still human at this point. Probably will always be in human form. I'll always be human, but in actuality, I am my spirit. I am my soul, and the soul there's nothing human about the soul. It's eternal, just like Brahman, the creator, is eternal. There's a big difference between the transient and the intransient. The path to liberation is not a flight from action. You're not trying to get away from action. What you're trying to do is have a positive, luminous being with light thrown at it, wisdom, seeing it through wise eyes, so to speak, luminous participation in the world. In other words, being in the moment, as I said earlier. And you suffuse that with awareness by being here and not in those loops in the past or in the future. You start to see it? I hope so. And by surrendering. So you go, well, what are you surrendering? Well, you're surrendering to reality, to the will of the Creator, and even the will of your own soul, as opposed to opposing that little voice within that's constantly reminding you to do right and to take care of business, so to speak. Comparative reflections is the next one. The encounter between Vyasa, Sankara, and myself is not a competition of authorities. Well, how can I compete with Vyasa, the author, the one that compiled the great Mahabharata, which is the great book, and from that book was taken a smaller section, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So he's actually the author of both of those. How can I compete with that? And I certainly cannot compete with the great Sankara, who is the great commentator, the great narrator. But I'm just an older man, aging yogi in the 21st century in South Austin, Texas. So how can someone of my stature compete with legendary figures? So it's not a competition of authorities, but a symphony of perspectives. Well, even as an old aging yogi in South Austin, I can have my own perspective of everything. And after 50 years of dealing with this and dealing with the philosophy involved in all of this, I do have a solid and sound and authoritative perspective of what's going on out there, folks. Whether you believe in me or not, it doesn't really bother me in the least, because I know what I know, and I'm not prideful about it, but I am proud of my ability to have been active in this field of philosophical comparisons over the last 50 years. I'm very happy about it. I shouldn't say proud, but I should say happy. I'm contented by that. Okay, so now we're going to the bullet points. Each commentary invites the seeker to inhabit the Gita's wisdom in a new way. Each commentary, their commentaries and my commentaries. I'm inviting you to inhabit the Gita's wisdom in a novel way. And hopefully you'll learn to do this, as I have. Shankara's Advaita uses the metaphysical unity underlying all action. My narrative, however, acknowledges non-duality and brings the Gita into ethical dialogue with modernity, emphasizing lived experience of social engagement. Well, it would have to be that. I'm not a historical figure yet, Action and contemplative. Shankara privileges contemplative withdrawal while I advocate for meditative engagement in the world. Well, I'm engaging in a meditative sense right now with you through this video. You go, well, how can you be meditating and talking and reading at the same time? Well, my friend, you haven't quite caught on to the true meaning of meditation if you can't understand that simple an example. And I'm not being mean or rude or aggressive. I'm just simply saying contemplation and meditation are much higher orders of thinking, and that's all they are. It's observation and thinking. So I can think and observe and read and narrate at the same time, just like I could, in the old days, I could chew gum and ride a bicycle at the same time. I was never very good at roller skating. I left that up to my sisters, but that's another story. So action and contemplation, well, there it is. Shankara privileges contemplative withdrawal while I advocate for meditative engagement with the world. I'm meditating all the time. I mean, this is my thinking apparatus. One of the gears in it is a meditative gear. Not all people have that going on in their thinking mechanism, but I've incorporated contemplation and meditation in my thinking application. There I'm using words. Well, I'm an old wordsmith. If you've written for 50 years, and over 50 years, I started writing in about the third grade, little short stories and little poems and things. So, that's what's said about 65, 68 years I've been writing. So action, contemplation. Shankara privileges contemplative withdrawal while I advocate for meditative engagement with the world. Salvation and self-knowledge. For both, the final surrender, abandonment of all dharma in Krishna, is the heart of liberation, yet the accent falls differently. Shankara on self-realization and myself on essential wholeness. I'm an integrative. My mind is very integrative, sort of like Swami Satchidananda. I like to integrate all positive logical knowledge into my study of yoga and my practice of writing and my practice of producing my personal philosophy, which I write about. I mean, that's my specialty. So now we're down to the next one, the culmination, surrender and freedom. Chapter 18's inclusive verses, Krishna's injunction to abandon all duties to take refuge in the divine, resonate through the centuries as the echo of ultimate freedom. For Shankara, this is the invitation to rest in the absolute. Now, when we hear the word absolute, or read the word absolute, and we're reading it in a yogic sentence or yogic text, the absolute in general means the creator. It means Brahman. That's another name for the creator, Brahman, the absolute. Excuse me. Brahman. The Gita's wisdom refracted through our commentaries become a living path, a yoga for the soul in every age and circumstance. Well, hopefully that's not just a speculative statement. Hopefully that will come to pass. Now we're down to the conclusion, and we're doing quite well. We're almost at 30 minutes. I try to keep these under 30, 35 minutes. Chapter 18 of the Gita stands as both a summation and a transcendence of all preceding teachings, an luminous dialogue between Vyasa, Shankara, and myself. We discovered the perennial freshness of Gita's voice, the Gita's voice, a song of renunciation that is not world-denying, a gospel action that is not egoic, a proclamation of freedom that is not escapist. To read the 18th chapter in the Shankara and myself is to be reminded that spiritual wisdom is inexhaustible, forever inviting us beyond the frontiers of doctrine and dogma into the living heart of surrender and self-realization. The whole point of yoga is liberation, self-realization, and, well, you can fill in the blank. Each person has their own vantage point of what the fulfillment of yoga for themselves shall be. The Gita's final word is always an open invitation to act, to know. I should have said the Gita's final words are always an open invitation, and then to act, to know, to love, and above all, to abandon oneself into the infinite embrace of the real. Now, when we say the real, again, it's like saying the absolute. We're saying into the embrace of the Creator, Brahman, God, the Para-Atman, the Great Soul. And there it is. That's chapter 18. And I can't believe it. I've just finished the 40th video. It tend to go to fulfill my self-set goal of 50 by my 75th birthday to have been accomplished in under 60 days, which, well, say 70 days, whatever, a couple of months. But that's a rather ambitious task for an older man to take on, wouldn't you say? You know, most people in their mid-70s are, trying to figure out which nursing home to check into, and how to get out of paying as much death taxes so that their children and grandchildren can inherit from their estates if they're of that caliber. These things are not important to me. What's important to me is keeping the brain and the mind and the soul fresh unto the very, very end until I'm called home, so to speak. It's after all, it's all creation, preservation, and dissolution. That's all there is to life. The wonderful thing about being a yogi is, though, and this is just a personal thing I'm going to impart to you at this point. The wonderful thing about being a yogi is you never age the soul does not age. It is ageless. It is outside of time and space, just like the Creator is. So in my mind, people say, oh, I feel like I'm 29. Well, that's a good person. That's a person that has learned the value of aging with the soul, so to speak, even though I just said the soul doesn't age. It's ageless. So if you feel the same right now in your 70s as you did when you were 29, you're a remarkable creature. And I'm one of those remarkable creatures. To me, my mind is just as fresh. And when I say mind, I'm talking about my intellect, my memory, and so forth and so on. The complex, the mind, brain, mind, intellect, soul complex. It's just as fresh now as it was when I was in my 8, 10, 12, 15, whatever. It's never changed. It has never changed. Now, bodily, physically, the gross body, I have a Parkinsonian disease. I walk almost like a toddler. I use a cane when I walk long distances. And I do have tremors in my left hand, and I do have vocal problems, and so forth and so on. But that's only the body. The body, you have to remember, folks, the body is a transport, just like a vehicle, for the brain and the spinal cord, and the mind, and the intellect, and the soul while you're living on this earth. To me, that's what the body is. Well, you take care of your car, you take care of your SUV, so I take care of my body as well as I can, considering everything. So here we are at 34 minutes. I was a little personal there, but I'm actually getting a little bit sentimental now that I'm ending my 18th chapter of the Gita. Not many people have taken on a narration of the Gita using comparative philosophy and dialogue of such a nature as I've undertaken here. And hopefully that work will stand the test of time. I hope it will. I've gotten a little personal here and there, but then again, who wants to hear a lecturer or someone giving a discourse that's just blah, 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 and not throwing a little thing and they're to have a little sense of humor to them, or a little lightheartedness. I wouldn't want to hear something like that just drone on for hours at a time. But of course, that's just me. So here we are at 35 minutes, and I'm going to close out now. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my series if you listened to all 18 chapters. And if you did, that's wonderful. If you didn't, that's okay too. And I always wrap up with these final words. Be good to yourself, be good to others, be good to friends, family, and strangers. And who knows, someday we may wake up in a revised world where all the tyrannical politics and all the hatefulness that's going on in modern day life has gone back because the initiators of it have passed on or been not reelected or stolen office or whatever they are attempting to do out there. I don't get into politics there heavily or economics, but well, let's just hope someday, pretty soon, we'll wake up and say, oh, we're back to the way it used to be. Those narcissistic despots are finally gone, and hopefully they're receiving their proper karma. Yes, let's hope that. And goodbye to you. I have 10 more to go. I haven't quite chosen the subject yet. I've come up with a few ideas, but they will be much lighter than the Gita, which is the important book, I think. So good night to you, and thank you again. Bye-bye.